Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Rixson number 10602. This is an unusual piece of hardware in the sense that it's not very common. I don't sell it very often, even though it should definitely be a piece of hardware that is sold more often, because it's used when you have exceptionally wide and heavy doors that are pivoted near the standard or at the standard location for hardware. And it's a whole bag of hardware that's here for this unit. And there are installation instructions that are listed here as well. Okay, and we're going to go over all of that right now. Let's start with an overview of what the item is. According to Rixson, and there's a link below this video to the cut sheet of the item, casters are required for all doors over 5 foot wide that are pivoted near the heel edge of the door. So we commonly get requests from clients if we feel that it is acceptable to install a set of pivots on a 6 foot wide door and one last week on an 8 foot wide door. But they were moving the pivot point into the center of the door. And speaking generally, the manufacturer has stated, yes, you're probably going to be just fine when you move that pivot point in, even though the door width exceeds what's listed in the catalog, and when your weight is within the published design engineered specifications for the pivot. I really think when the manufacturer is talking about a maximum width, they are certainly planning on the fact that you are installing it per the template. Let's say you're doing a center hung pivot, and let's say that that pivot point is, just throwing a number out there, 3 inches from the edge of the door over. So if they're saying the maximum door width is 4 foot or 4'6", okay, let's say it was 4 foot, and let's say you had, 3 inches over. I think what they're really saying is, you don't want to really get beyond that 48-inch dimension, or in this case, maybe 45-inch dimension, from that pivoting point over, okay? While I've not had that exact conversation with the factory, I believe that's the essence of the point. However, when you get over 5 foot wide and you're keeping the pivot installed at the standard templated location, they want you to use a caster. And there are 2 models. There's the single wheel, which is a 10600, and then there's the 10602, which I have here. Can assist doors weighing up to 730 pounds for the single wheel. For doors that get up to 1,500 pounds, throw the double wheel model onto it. And this is one that I've just quickly assembled. We're going to go over the parts in a moment. Metal door, minimum thickness 1.75 inches, no problem. If it's a wood door, however, they're looking for a minimum thickness of 2.25 inches. And while you could probably force this to fit onto a door that's 1.75 inches thick, and we'll put the tape measure on these parts in a moment, the wall thickness of what would be left over would be so thin that it would be a point of failure on the door, is why they're coming with a 2.25 inch minimum door thickness. You're going to get 3 shim plates that you can use to adjust the position of the caster. You're going to get an end cap to close off the edge of the door, which is optional. Hollow metal mounting plate available, meaning if you are manufacturing a gate or a door and you want to have a prefabricated piece that is already drilled and tapped for the positions of the mounting holes that you can literally weld into your structure, Rixson can provide that. This would be for low frequency doors, for interior applications, for pivoted doors only. I'm thinking people are going to use this on exterior applications, but what cause for concern comes to my mind is having mortised pivots lots of times in the past. Never do you have to consider, even though you must install that completely plumb and accurate so that the door hangs proper, you don't really think about the fact that how many doors are certainly not going to be level. Pardon me. How many floors are certainly not going to be level. You're going to need to have a level floor in my mind for this to work. I do not see any provision for this piece of hardware to work successfully if you have a floor that's significantly out of level. I'd be very concerned about the success of it. Let's go over the parts that we have here. Let's jump into that part of the video. And I've used my tiny little cordless screw gun just to quickly move the pieces around. And I do not use battery-powered tools for doing final fitting on hardware, but I will use them for purposes of a video just to demonstrate what all the pieces and parts are. Okay, so as I'm just removing the 3 or 4 screws that I put together here, there are installation instructions below this video that are going to give you a manifest of all the parts. The only deviation I see is that part number 7, it's not included in here. And there must have been a design change because this order has 2 of them on it for a customer. And I'm going to say that it must have been a design change that this clamp is not included, because it seems as if it's just simply not required. Okay, so this clamp, my review of this will not include that. Let's go over the manifest of these parts. 3 shims. These are going to, if necessary, go underneath the mounting plate to drop that installation down. Okay, we're going to do dimensional properties of this stuff as we go through. 2 1/4 by 1 1/4, 1/16 of an inch thick. They seem, since we have the caliper, let's test it. 0.059, 0.059, 0.059. So yeah, 1/16 of an inch, which is 0.60. Well, 0.0625. 3 shims. Okay, part number 2 is going to be called a shim plate, and that is indeed here. We've got that shim plate here. Overall length of that piece is about 1 1/4 inches. Part number 3 is going to be the, pardon me, I said that wrong. That's not a shim plate, that's a threaded block. I don't know, I'm absent-mindedly. That is a threaded block is what that is. Let's move on to part number 3. Okay, part number 3 is called the spring plate. And that's really the business end that's going to connect and communicate between your casters and the bottom of the door. Overall length 4 3/4, and then 1 1/4 inches. That's a heavy piece of material. It's probably about 1/8 of an inch. .144 inch. 0.144 inch. Part number 4 is the caster. Let's see, where is part number 4? Those are your 2 wheels. Here you go. You've got 2 casters. Let's take some dimensional properties of these caster wheels. Diameter, 1.5 inch. That's right on the money. Thickness of the wheel, 0.564. 0.564 thickness of this wheel. Part number 5 is your 2-wheel caster. Piece of machined steel-based material where you're going to connect your 2 wheels to, and then your angle bracket to connect it to the spring plate. Quick dimensions of that item. Overall length about 3 1/4. At body diameter, and just for preserving the dimensions, 1 inch body diameter. You can see where everything lines up there. Okay. two-wheel hub. Part number 6 is the bracket. That's this. Sorry. Width of the bracket. Inch and 3/16. Overall height of the bracket, about 7/8. Clamp number 7, not present. Number 8 is a gasket. Number 8, okay. So the 8 is going to come attached to the end of the number 9, the end plate. 3 1/4, about 1 5/8 inches. Going to get a couple of screws to secure that. Then you're going to get a number of screws. Let's go over it. Well, for that end plate, you're going to get 2 flathead screws. For your wood screws or machine screws for the end plate, you're going to get 3 bolts that are going to look like this with a star washer and a split washer. You're going to use one of them will be used to connect the clamp down to the two-wheel hub. The other 2 are going to be used to attach the casters to the outside of the wheel hub. Okay. You're then going to get a 1/4 bolt with a lock washer to connect the clamp, which is bolted to the two-wheel hub, to the spring plate. You are then going to get 4 1/4 bolts, or these are probably number 14 panhead sheet metal screws, 4 of each, and 4 lock washers for attaching the spring plate to whatever you're attaching it to. With the exception of that clamp, that's everything that's here. Okay. Now let's go into the installation, or I should say the mortising of the material. Determine the clearance, page 2. Determine the clearance between the door and floor as shown in figure 1. Recommended clearance is 3/16 of an inch. Use the 060 thick shim plates provided to compensate for large gaps. So that's a cause for pause. You don't have to have a 3/16 gap. It's likely you're not going to have a 3/16 gap from the bottom of the door to your floor based on what you've done when mortising or prepping for the pivot hardware. So it would be awfully handy to know when you're installing the pivot to begin with that you're going with these casters so everything can be machined accordingly. I can definitely envision in my head how you might really need to modify the preparation of the spring plate in terms of its depth to account for the floor condition undercut as defined by the hardware. And all you need to do is to refer to the template for the pivot that you've used, the center hung pivot, and you'll see how you mortise that is directly related to the floor clearance that you want to accomplish. Wood door cutout, very simple. This is actually just like the wood door cutout for a double acting spring pivot. You're basically going to, if it's a wood door, you got to have a 2 1/4 inch thickness, and you'll see why in a moment. But you're going to take your plunge router and you're going to literally step the preparation. You just need to make your prep cutout look like this line. You know what, let me accent that a little bit with my pen. Make it double thick. You just need to make your prep look like what I've made thicker there. But be mindful, you're only prepping all that 1 5/8 wide. This line refers to that line. That line refers to the fact that you're not mortising that all the way out. Well, you are, but you're going one little notch up above there as well. So the first time I saw a preparation like this, I said to myself, well, okay, all I need to do is make my door look like this. Then you employ your tools to go about doing that. If I was going to do this prep, no, not a hammer and chisel, no. No. I would definitely be using a plunge router with a long 2-flute carbide bit. I would be doing that preparation all the way, the entire 7.5 inch, until I got to 2 5/30 deep. I would then adjust my template. I would then continue on for the additional 12/32 of an inch depth at the 4.5 inch, and I would exit all the way out the door if I was going to for sure be using the end plate. And then that last little bit there, I might do that last little bit by hand, that little 1/4 inch amount, or I'd come around to the other side of the door and buzz that out with my router. Making templates can be difficult. Porter Cable has a lock face template that I've used with great success doing stuff like this. You have to set it up, set your length and your width for the preparation. If you expect that you're going to do more than one of these, you might want to just make a template for yourself, and then you'll have repeatability. If you're only going to do 1 or 2, I probably wouldn't bother to make a template. But if I was going to do 3, I'd probably make a template for myself to achieve that preparation. Okay. Now, because that prep is 1 5/8 wide, that's why they're saying you can't have a door thinner than thinner than 2 1/4, because the wall thickness that's here would literally be 1/16 of an inch, and in fact it would be less than that. If you mortised 1 5/8 wide and you had 1 3/4 door, and you put a caliper on 1 3/4 door, it's not going to be 1.75. It's going to be 1.71, most likely, which means that your wall thickness is going to be 45 thousandths, which is just literally the veneer. So if you were to push your thumb on it, you would crush it all in. That's the problem with 1 3/4 thick door. Is it possible for you to do this? It is. Is it likely that you're going to take that router and tip it out and explode out the other side of the door? That's possible as well. So be mindful, 2 1/4 inch thick is what the factory says. Wood door cutout hole locations. So it gives you the locations of where the spring plate are going to reference where the screws are going to go. And absolutely, my goodness, pre-drill the screw holes, because that is an epically large screw, if you recall. They want a .228 diameter hole 4 times for that spring plate mounting. You can also see here where they want you to prep for the end plate. Those 2 holes are those 2 holes. Okay. Now, you don't have to prep it all. You don't have to come all the way out of the edge of the door if you don't want to. And that's why reading the installation instructions before you start cutting is crucial. You can do a preparation like that as well, where you can leave the heel edge of the door, which would be super elegant and would be what I would like to do, and slot yourself a hole for the adjustment. And we're going to get to that adjustment in a moment. Okay, now we're looking at the edge of the door. Then the last page talks about doing a steel door preparation. And again, you just simply need to make it. Forgive me, they do not show a steel door prep at all. A steel door prep, someone who is metalworking is going to be able to look at this template and realize, okay, that's what it needs to look like, and let's just go about business and make it look like that. So this part of the installation instructions is really the best overall summary of what this is supposed to look like. Taking my little screw gun here, I can quickly assemble all of the parts Caster goes on, and I've got these pieces pre-put together. And again, when I do my rough work, oops, I'll use a little tool like this, but I don't hand tighten. I don't tighten permanently with a screw gun because you can't control. There's no good feedback coming back to your hand to know how tight something is, and you don't want to take a piece of hardware like this and strip a screw, break a screw, strip a hole, things of that nature. Now my clamp is going to go on with my other screw, and when you lay out all of the screw parts, you know, putting a piece of low-end imported furniture is far more difficult than putting this together. This is obvious and simple and straightforward. Then our spring bracket's going to come like this. Oh, actually, I've got that backwards. I'm glad you were here catching me making mistakes. This clamp is not symmetrical. The long end has to go up, I've just realized. And there's a particular reason for that, which when you try to put on the spring plate, you'll discover. That's because this will need to ride into that space there. And when I had it the other way, I didn't allow myself enough room. So what needs to happen now is the block needs to go like this with the screw, so I'm going to just put it here on my desk and get it started very loosely. Loosely, that's what it all looks like. And I can affect the positioning of that spring plate based on, you know, that slot that's in here. And it can seat all the way down there. Otherwise, that's kind of what it's going to look like. Then after that, all I have left are my 3 shims. I've got my end plate and its 2 wood screws, it's sheet metal screws, and its 2 machine screws. Then I've got my 4 and 4 each with their lock washers. That's all that's left. Now you're done with the installation, the assembly of the material. Obviously, you're going to want to lay everything out dimensionally. You're going to want to work the door in the flat. You're going to want to get all of the hardware attached. I would bring this to a minimum dimension is what I would do, so I can get the door hung, and then I would, by accessing the end of the door, affect where all of this is going to sit, whether I have the slot that's prepped or the end plate. Shim this as necessary. The problem, however, is once you get the door hung, you're not going to be sticking shim plates in there. Well, I suppose it's possible, but you're going to want to work that in the flat when the door is laying down. I predict the door coming off the pivot at least once if I was installing it. That exhausts the installation instructions. We've gone over all of the goodies regarding that. The name Rixson, synonymous, utterly, literally synonymous with pivot hardware. Their name is with many other pieces of hardware, such as floor closers. So when it comes to floor closers, the name Rixson is one. If you make a living, or at least remotely get into the industry of commercial door hardware, you will run into Rixson. We have been working with Rixson floor closers for decades. We provide a service where we can arrange the rebuilding, the repair of floor closers that are long discontinued by decades. I think our record is 1904 on the year that one was manufactured that we've been able to successfully bring back to life. Floor closers, pivots. You're going to know Rixson for then some other hardware that's less that they are less notorious for, but they do a great job with. Overhead stops and holders, their Checkmate series of material. electromagnetic door holders like you'll see in a hospital, where you've got either line or low voltage, line voltage or low voltage going to an electromagnet to hold the doors open until interrupted by a input from a fire signal, fire alarm panel. They're going to be able to help you with ancillary hardware such as angle stops. They have a line of custom thresholds that you can use on their floor closers. If you think about a floor closer, you'll realize if it's an exterior door, you still have a need to weather strip that opening. Rixson can help with that. They are going to be able to help you with door holder closer combinations where you are taking an input from either an ionization detector or from a fire alarm input. They can help you with that. And low energy door operators they can help with as well. And some specialized hardware, not worth mentioning in terms of, there's a handful of things that are kind of unique to them. If you have more than an occasional need for pivots or floor closers, you will absolutely want to bookmark the link to the catalog for Rixson, because their name is just the name used for that material. Fun fact, there is a link below this video where you can pull up not only all the Rixson products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. And the fun fact, I have a scan of a catalog that Rixson published April 1st of 1920. A real interesting catalog. What's really fun about that is the fact that certain pieces of their line just haven't changed. And considering the fact that catalog's almost 100 years old, the mechanics, the geometries, the problems that hardware solves has transcended the decades, and Rixson's been a leader in doing all of that. If you have any questions on pivot hardware, how to make that stuff work, I've machined for it, I've sold it, I've installed it, I've provided troubleshooting services as well. So Rich Howard, Architectural Builders, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.